Demand for this exotic fabric eventually created the lucrative trade route now known as the Skill Road, taking silk westward and bringing gold, silver, and wool to the east. It was named the Silk Road after its most precious commodity, which was considered to be worth more than gold. The Silk Road stretched over 6,000 kilometers from eastern China to the Mediterranean Sea, following the Great Wall of China, climbing the Pamir mountain range, crossing modern-day Afghanistan and going on to the Middle East, with a major trading market in Damascus. Starting in the year of 2010, Ireland passed a law stating that all children of age 3 years and 2 months and less than 4 years and 7 months are qualified to attend a preschool free of charge. Before this law was passed, there was a large number of children who did not attend an early childhood education program. The programs that were offered operated voluntary and required the parents to pay a steep fee per child. This left many families with no option but to keep the kids at home. The government soon realized that a large number of children were having trouble in their first years of primary school and parents were having to stay home, becoming jobless. Once the government issued the free preschool scheme, Ireland's preschool enrollment rate increased. For all his fame and celebrations, William Shakespeare remains a mysterious figure with regards to Tom's personal history. There are just 2 primary sources for information on the bard: his works, and various legal and church documents that have survived from Elizabethan times. Naturally, there are many gaps in this body of information, which tells us little about Shakespeare the man. It's checkmate for checkers. The 5,000 years old game has been completely solved, and a checkers playing issue of the journal Science. The researchers spent almost 2 decades going through the 500 billion possible checkers positions, which is still an infinitesimally small fraction of the number of chess positions, by the way. The checkers effort included top player who helped the research team program checkers rules of thumb into software that categorized moves as successful or unsuccessful. Then the researchers let the program run, on an average, 50 computers daily. Some days, the program ran 200 machines. While the researchers monitored progress and tweaked the program accordingly. In fact, Chinook beat humans to win the checkers world championship back in 1994. Today at the Experimental Biology meeting Washington, Dr. Robert Hankins reports he's found a way to restore smell in 75% of his patients. The answer is in nasal mucus, which has growth factors that cause stem cells to mature and create smell receptors. People who can't smell also lack a normal number of these growth factors. Hankin increased with so-called PDE inhibitors, the class of drugs that includes Viagra. Smelling for the first time, patients face a childlike challenge. They have to learn the relationship between objects and scents. Because most reporters are for sweet things, patients smell these first. Nice, that they can start with honeysuckle, coconut, homemade chocolate chip cookies. Campylobacter found in raw chicken sold consumers is generally on the surface of the birds, which means that adequate cooking quickly destroys the bacteria. But scientists now think that it might be entering chicken's muscle tissue and internal organs. Infection by Campylobacter is considered to be the most prevalent cause of bacterial diarrheal disease worldwide. Compared to many other pathogens, we know comparatively little about the bacteria, and there are still many more questions than answers. There is a need for alternative strategies to reduce Campylobacter in chickens and Campylobacter-induced disease burden in humans. The low roof keeps everybody seated and at equal eye level. It's very egalitarian. I mean, you can't stand up and take over the meeting. You'd actually bump your head. In meeting houses, there's always a central space where you can sit around a circle and see each other. So we designed a space jet-like hat right in the middle of the Arco Center, and we anchored it with a fireplace and a kitchen. It's pretty hard to get a kitchen and a fireplace in a building like this with the building codes, but it is so important to the concept, we got it done. And now the central space works for big social gathering and a place to meet one-to-one for the very first time. It's almost like this three-way intersection that encourages bumping into people and starting a conversation. How, it turns out, when you've been stabbed with sea urchin spines, and you're 2 days away from any medical help, the thing that you've got to do is, unfortunately, cook your hand. So you put it in water as you can stand, and you keep adding boiling water until you think you will go absolutely insane. Now, it worked. The hand itself did not work so well for several weeks after that, but eventually, fine motor skills returned. All except for one spot, that stayed stiff and painful for weeks after the other things had gotten better. So it turned out, I'd broken off a tip of the urchin spine in the joint itself, and that's why it wasn't getting better. So the orthopedist says, we should get this out. Nothing too urgent, not emergency, so we scheduled small surgery for a week's out on a Monday. And on the Friday before, I broke my pelvis in a horseback riding accident. Adam Smith, referred to by many as an inventor of modern technology, is often lauded as a hero of free market capitalism. Yet the Scotsman's ideas are not necessarily compatible with those espoused by many of today's Kabbalists. Smith's invisible hand theory, for instance, is generally interpreted to mean that individual always beneficial to society and that all government intervention should be avoided. However, this viewpoint was not central to Smith's writings and was touched on only briefly in his most successful book, The Wealth of Nations. In it, he describes the economy of 18th-century Europe against a backdrop of history and politics. His concern was for the development of contemporary society as a whole. In fact, he advocated government intervention in several important areas, including in a state's infrastructure and as a means of encouraging innovation. As a consumer, you're probably consuming imports. If we have a trade war and we start slapping tariffs on all of those imports, the bill is going to be higher. If the world relies so much on trade, what is a trade war and why do countries get caught up in the first place?